Hi, welcome back to another daily Photoshop Creative Challenge. I'm Jesús Ramirez. Thank you so much for being with me again. Today we're going to talk about color grading and color correcting images in Photoshop. And I'm going to explain what the difference of those two things are in a moment. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you again for being with me. And also, if you're going to follow along with me today, make sure that you head over to the Daily Creative Challenge page, which is this one here. If you go into Daily Creative Challenge on behance.net, you should reach this page. Make sure to first click on this subscribe button to join the conversation and get some feedback. And also scroll down all the way to this challenge, Wednesday, May 8th, so that you can download the template that we're going to be working with today. That's a PSD file that contains several documents that we're going to use. So that's very important to do. So while you're downloading that, I'm just gonna check over on the chat just to see how you guys are doing today. And let me just see what's going on over here with you guys. Anna, as usual. Hey Anna, how's it going? Sandra, Rasim, Sam, hey everybody, how's it going? Good to see you. Kata Jones, as usual, like I said, every time I look at the chat, there you are. It's a pleasure seeing you today. So thank you everybody for being here today. Just remember to download that template and so that you can follow along with today's challenge. So these files are going to be just files that you can use so that you can follow along with the technique. But obviously in the challenge, you want to use your own images to apply either a color grade or a color correction. Again, I'll explain the differences once we get started with the challenge. Also, once you're downloading the template, make sure that you join the Discord community. You can click on this blue button, or you can go onto that page there to join the Discord community, and you'll get to this page here where you have all these different channels where you can chat, ask questions, look at tips and tricks. If you're following along with today's challenge or any of the challenges, make sure that you submit your work on the design feedback page where myself, the other mentors, the Adobe team, and other users can help you with suggestions, ideas, or any questions that you may have based on the projects that you're working with. So check it out. As you can see, there's a lot of challenges being submitted already. You can just scroll up and see what people are doing, get some ideas, give them feedback, ask questions, whatever you want to do. So once again, make sure that you click on the link that was just above me, and then you can go on to the Discord page and you have all the different channels right over here. So check that out. Design a feedback is where you would leave all the work that you are working, that you're following along with. So highly recommend this community so that you can get answers to your questions and so that you can show off your work and let us give you our opinions. So before we get started, I just want to make sure that everything's okay on the chat. Hello everybody. Hi. Everybody's saying hello. So thank you so much for being with me today. Hey Tim, how's it going? Good to see you as always. Richard, hi, how's it going? So yeah, let's get started. Before you, if you're just joining us, make sure that you go back onto the Daily Creative Challenge page, which is found on behance.net/Daily Creative Challenge. And I think someone in the chat already pasted the link, so thank you so much for that. And make sure that you scroll down to the color tab and click on the Get Template button so you can download the PSD that we're going to work with today. Also, very important, once you complete a project, whether it's this challenge or another challenge, make sure that you tag it with the hashtag PS Daily Challenge. Notice that PS is in capital letters. It is case sensitive, so PS in capital letters, Daily Challenge in lowercase. And the reason that you want to do that is so that when I do a search for the PS Daily Challenge, I will see the work that you guys are working with, have created. So please make sure to enter the PS Daily Challenge keyword when you're uploading your project to Behance. And I'll change it to the most recent sort. That way I can see some of the recent work that people have been doing. This is the clouds and fog effect that we did yesterday. So if you missed that video, it was a video on creating brushes from your photos. And we used the photo of a cloud to create fog, smoke, and things of the sort. So check it out. There's also a double exposure effect. We created album covers like that one there. And we've been doing all sorts of fun projects. So I highly recommend going back to the old videos in case you have not watched them. So let's get started with today's project. Let me bring up Photoshop, and you should have a PSD that contains these layers. And what I'm going to do is describe or explain to you what color correcting is and what color grading is. So let's start with color grading. A color grade is a way of adding color to your image to tell the story. If you go and actually, let me bring up a web page. If you go on to, and maybe somebody on the chat, or actually I'll post it in the chat. I'll just copy this link and I'll paste it on the chat. So I wrote an article for the Adobe Creative blog on color grading, so you can read all about it if you like. It's all there. But basically, what color grading is adding color to an image or to video to help it tell your story. So I think everyone here probably has seen the movie The Matrix, which is that one there. And if you notice in that movie, they use color grading to enhance the story. So I guess this is not a spoiler, movie came out over 20 years ago, but they're all living in a simulation, in a computer world, really. So the color grade that they went for is a green, orangey type of look that enhances that particular story. So that's what color grading is. There's no right or wrong colors to use when you color grade. It's supposed to help you enhance your story. However, there's a color grade that is very, very popular in movies, usually action movies or any like summer blockbuster type of movie, and that is the orange teal look. So if you look at these images, you'll see the Batman vs. Superman movie, a Terminator movie, Jurassic World, and a Mission Impossible movie, and they all have one thing in common. They use the orange, teal, or blue, orange, or that combination of colors to help the actor stand out from the background. Notice that there's teals and oranges in the shadows, and then the skin tones remain untouched by that blue look. See that? You can see that here. You can see on his face. And even on this image of New York, this is from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you can see that they use the blue-orange combination for the city. So it's a very, very popular look in movies, and we're going to recreate that today in Photoshop. Now, the important thing is that when you color grade an image, you need to make sure that you have an image that has been color corrected. An image that does not have a color cast, because if it has a color cast, then it's going to be really, really difficult to apply a color grade, and it's not going to look the way that you want it to. So we're going to start by color correcting images, and then we're going to move on to color grading. So for today's challenge, you can upload one or two types of images. You can upload an image that you color corrected, or you can upload an image that you color graded, or you can upload both. So just keep that in mind. Color correction is color balancing an image so that we don't have any colors that are not so that the grays are neutral. So basically, you'll sometimes see images that are too yellow, too blue, and you want to neutralize the grays to color balance an image. And then color grading is applying a color to tell a story. So that is the difference of color grading and color correcting. So let me bring Photoshop back up, and we're going to work with this file that has a food truck. And now this is a terrible image, but that's actually a good thing because it's going to show us how we can use Photoshop tools to easily color balance this image, to remove that ugly green just to make it look a little bit better. And there's a lot of ways of doing that in Photoshop. One of my favorite ways is taking advantage of the Photoshop algorithms that are included inside the curves adjustment layer. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer. You can get to the curves adjustment by clicking on this icon right here, the half filled circle, and clicking on curves. And curves allows us to adjust the luminosity of the image and allows us to adjust the lighting of each channel. And you don't really have to worry about any of that to do color correction because Photoshop has an auto button. And this auto button applies an algorithm that should theoretically help you color correct your image. So when you click on this, watch what happens. We get a terrible result. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Photoshop does not use the best algorithm for color correcting images. If you want to change the default algorithm that Photoshop uses, you can click on the auto button while holding the Alt key. That's the Option key on the Mac. If you don't like keyboard shortcuts, you can go into this icon and select Auto Options. I like using keyboard shortcuts, so I'm going to hold Alt, Option on the Mac, and click on Auto. And that is going to bring up this window. And with this window selected, you can select the different algorithms. So for example, I can click on Enhance Monochromatic Contrast, Enhance Per Channel Contrast, but the one that I find works the best is the Find Dark and Light Colors algorithm. Watch what happens as soon as I select this algorithm. See how much better the image looks? It neutralizes the colors almost immediately. Then I can click on Snap Neutral Midtones and it further enhances that effect. And I can actually set this as the default algorithm so that the Curves Auto button always applies this algorithm when I click on that button. So I can do that by clicking on Save as Defaults and press OK. So now, next time that I create a curves adjustment layer, I can click on Auto and it applies that auto adjustment. So it is a really, really cool adjustment that you can apply, algorithm that you can apply to the curves adjustment layer so that it always comes up by default. And that's the one that I personally like the best and the one that I think should be the default algorithm. In my opinion, it works best in most cases, but you're free to use any other algorithm if you find that it works better for you. But that's the one that I think works best in most cases. So, as good as this algorithm is, it's not perfect. So we have this second image here. And with this second image, I can apply the same algorithm. So I can click on Auto and it apply the same algorithm. If I click on Alt, Option on the Mac, and click on Auto, you'll see that it has the same settings we had before, but the image is still not neutralized. So as good as this algorithm is, it won't give you a perfect result on every image, but we can make it work. All we need to do is click on this eyedropper here. This is the gray point eyedropper, the one right in the middle between the black point eyedropper and the white point eyedropper. If we click on that center eyedropper, all we need to do is click anywhere on the image that we think should be a neutral gray. So the bricks on the path should be a neutral gray. So if I click on that, the image looks much, much better and it removes the color cast. I can also try clicking maybe on the strap on her backpack, maybe clicking on her sweater, and just seeing what gives me the best result. And that will neutralize the image and it will look much, much better. At this point, we can color grade this image to apply a color that tells a story. But just keep in mind that if the algorithm doesn't work, you always have the option of using that gray point eyedropper. I know what some of you may be thinking. Well, why not just use the gray point eyedropper to begin with and then just skip the auto button? If you decide to do that, notice that the image will have neutral colors, but the image is washed out. So you would still need to adjust the contrast to try to make it look better. So in my opinion, it's better to just click on the auto button first. And if it doesn't work, move on into the eyedropper and just select anything that should be a neutral gray, and that should neutralize your image. So it's either one step or at the very most 2 steps, but generally speaking, these are the steps that would give you a color balanced image really, really quickly in Photoshop. And it's all non-destructive because we're using an adjustment layer. Non-destructive means that we can adjust the adjustment that we made, or we can delete it entirely and start from scratch. And that's usually the way that you want to work in Photoshop. You want to have the option of coming back and making adjustments or deleting the adjustment entirely if you want to. Tim wrote, more Adobe Cadabra. Adobe Cadabra. I like that word. Nice one, Tim. Gold star for calling out fine grain points. Thank you, Chad. But anyway, so now we're gonna move on to color grading an image. So we're gonna tell a story with this particular image. And what story are we going to tell? Well, we're just gonna try to mimic that summer blockbuster teal, orange, blue, orange effect that we saw in those stills for those summer blockbuster movies that I showed you just a second ago in the Adobe Creative Cloud blog. If you weren't here for that part, this is what I was talking about. I wrote an article on Adobe's blog on color grading, and here are some examples of what a lot of movies do. They use the blues and teals and oranges on the skin tone, and that's because if you scroll down to the color wheel, you'll find the skin tones in this area. In the opposite color, the complementary color, are the teals and blues and greens. So that's why you see that color combination a lot, because when you put skin tone against blue, orange, and teal, it tends to pop. Not orange, blue and teal and green, it tends to pop. Usually blue and orange, blue and teal is the combination that you see in most films. So that's the effect that we're going to replicate. In this tutorial, by the way, I use the curves adjustment layer, which is what we just used, but it's one of the more complicated tools to use in Photoshop when it comes to color grading and color correcting. So we're gonna use a tool that gives us good results, but it's a little easier to understand if you're a beginner. But feel free to read that article on Adobe's blog, and you can use the curves adjustment layer if you like. But for this stream, what we're going to use is a selective color adjustment layer, selective color. So we have a way of adding, selecting a color and then adding a color to that color. So I know it sounds a little weird, but I think it'll be obvious once I start adjusting the sliders. Now, it's very important to understand that we have two options, relative and absolute. And the best way I can explain this to you is if we are working with, say, yellows, and we have a pixel that is yellow, and we'll just say that that pixel is 50% yellow, for example. If I increase the yellows by 10%, then that 50% yellow pixel now is 60% yellow if we have absolute. However, if we select relative, now that 10% is relative to the original value. So 10% of 50% would be 5%, so it's a total of 55. So that's the difference between absolute and relative. I'm gonna select absolute, and that's what I'm gonna work with. And I'm going to click on this icon to reset the sliders. And what we want to do is we want to work with the shadows first. Remember on this image of the superheroes and movies and screenshots right there, the shadows contain mainly blues and teals. So that's what we want to do in this example. So I'm going to select the blacks, and I'm going to increase the cyans to add cyan into the shadows. I'm going to reduce the yellows to get blue. And the reason that I get blue when I reduce yellow is because blue is the opposite of yellow. If you don't know what the opposite colors of each color is, no worries. All you need to do is create a color balance adjustment layer, and this adjustment layer gives you a good visual representation of the relationship of each of the colors. So see that? Yellow, the opposite is blue. Magenta, the opposite is green. Cyan, and the opposite is red. Unfortunately, the selective color adjustment layer doesn't display it like that, but it's the same relationship. So I'm going to increase the cyan just to add cyan into the shadows, reduce the yellows to add blue into the shadows. Then I'm going to make the shadows darker. And I'm going to move on to the neutrals, and I'll do the same thing. I'll reduce the yellows, cyans, and maybe reduce the magentas a tiny bit. And you can keep making all these type of adjustments until you get the right color combination that you want, until you get the right look that you want. Again, this is all very subjective. There's no real right or wrong settings. It's just what looks good to your eye. So use these settings as starting points and then see what works best for your image. One of the things that I mentioned was that the skin tones remain unaffected, so we have a layer mask. So what I'm gonna do is just paint with black on my layer mask. See how black is my foreground color, and I'm painting on this layer mask to hide that effect from the skin tones. So I'm just painting on that mask so that it doesn't affect the skin tone. So see how we have the orange blue look? And if I want to adjust the skin tones, I can just create a selective color adjustment layer, copy that layer mask. So I'm going to hold Alt, Option on the Mac and drag it up and replace it. So now I have the same mask, but I'm going to invert it. Control I, Command I on the Mac. So now this adjustment layer is only going to affect the skin. I can go into the reds because that's where you find most of the skin tones, no matter ethnicity. You can also find a little bit in the yellows. And I can adjust the skin tones as well, just to try to make them more, more pleasing to the eye, depending on the effect that you're going for. So in this case, I don't really want that second adjustment. I actually like her original skin tone much better. So I'm just going to delete this adjustment and I'll work with one. But I wanted to give you that option of adjusting the skin tones on your image if you really wanted to. What I'm going to do now is just crop the image to make it look a little more cinematic. So one of the aspect ratios that you can use to create that really cool wide looking screen that you see in movies is use the 2:4:0 aspect ratio. So just with the crop tool, select original ratio and type 2.40 is really the crop setting, but it's gonna default back to 2.4 and that's okay. And for the second one, I'll type 1 and you get that wide screen aspect ratio that you see in a lot of movies. And from here, you can just adjust the placing of your subject. And we have like a really cool cinematic looking color grade just by using one single adjustment layer and cropping the image to a really widescreen aspect ratio so it looks more cinematic. What you can do now is save this. So I'm going to go into File, Export, Export As. And I'm going to save it as a JPEG. Save it on the desktop and I'll call it Daily Challenge number 7. That's fine. And remember to go into behance.net and upload your project. And let me just find this file. There it is. And the important thing that you have to do on behance.net is make sure that you use the, let me give it a title. Oh, I'm not using the right aspect ratio. Let me just select a different image. I think the one from yesterday should work just so I can show you. I'm running a little bit out of time, so I just want to get an image in there, and all I want to do is show you where you can get the discoverability option, so you can enter the keyword that I was talking about in the beginning of the stream. So remember how I was talking about including the keyword so that you can get this option. So remember to type PS in capital letters, Daily Challenge in lowercase, and that's under discoverability, under keywords, and I can hit the comma, click on save, and then that's how you would get that keyword on there so you can be found on the search. Don't forget to join our Discord page. Once again, Discord is found on that link, so check it out. And please remember to go into the design feedback. Let me show you what that looks like. The design feedback is right here on this channel here, design feedback, and you can upload your design feedback on the work that you're doing, and myself and the Adobe team could give you advice, suggestions, and answer your questions. So check out the Discord page. If you were interested in the color grading tutorial on the Adobe blog, you can see it here. Somebody posted it. Thank you, Chad, for posting that link. That's another reason why you want to be on Discord, so that you can get all the resources that you need. I'll be back again tomorrow for another daily creative challenge. Thank you so much for being with me today. I just want to say thank you to the usual people. Not just to the usual people, to everybody. Kata, Chad, Samuel, thank you so much for being with me. Tim, Sandra, Anna, Catherine, Mark. Scrolling, I'm trying to read everybody's name. Pokehan, Angelique, Bruce, Mariana, Razum. Thank you everybody for being with me today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you again tomorrow for another daily creative challenge. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you all tomorrow. Thank you so much.